Hello everyone, my name is Braden, this is Airless Quill 9, and in today's video we're going to take a look at a bunch of stat block changes. So as you can see here up on the screen, the first one that we're going to take a look at is the Ancient Gold Dragon. Now there are a number of noticeable changes in the stat block. First off, it is very compact now. You can see it's very easy to read. It fits entirely on the screen, and it looks a lot more well, it does look a lot more compact, but there's a lot of new goodies in here compared to the 2014 version. So let's take a look at those specific changes. The first thing that we're going to notice off the bat here is that the new stat blocks now have an initiative score here, and we can see that the Ancient Gold Dragon has a plus 16 to initiative, so it is adding double its proficiency bonus to its initiative rolls. So it has a very high initiative score, so that is very cool to see. These higher challenge rating monsters get high initiative bonuses to make sure that they not necessarily always go first in combat, but it is a very high likelihood, which is very cool to see here. Also noticeably, you see here that this particular stat block changes picture talks about how modifiers and saves are now presented together as a table, so it's very easy to see what those modifiers are to either an ability check using that roll or a saving throw. And noticeably here, the Ancient Gold Dragon has a lost proficiency in Constitution and Charisma saving throws. So that's interesting to see there. But it does have very high scores for all of these abilities, so I'm not sure that's much of a detriment to them specifically. Also noticeably here in the challenge rating section, the Ancient Gold Dragon now gives additional experience when fighting it in its lair. So normally it is 62,000, but now if you're fighting it in its lair, it gives you 75,000. So that's really neat to see there. Also, in relation to the lair giving a XP benefit, it also gives a benefit to legendary resistances. You can now see that the Ancient Gold Dragon now has 4 legendary resistances per day. Previously, they only had 3, so that's an increase there. But they have 5 if they're in their lairs. So these dragons are harder to fight when they're in their lair, and I like that that is now being reflected in the stat blocks themselves. That's very, very cool to see. Next, we can see here in the action section that the Ancient Gold Dragon has a new multi-attack. So the dragon now makes 3 rend attacks. This is a consolidation of the bite, claw, and tail attacks rolled into one. And noticeably, these now deal fire damage as well as, it says here, slashing. So previously, none of the Gold Dragon's attacks dealt fire damage, so that is a nice addition to that. But for their multi-attack, they could also replace one of those 3 rend attacks with a casting of Guiding Bolt at 4th level, or they can use their Weakening Breath, which is a pretty significant benefit there. You can also see here, they're talking about how saving throw and failure and success are more clearly presented. You can really see how easy it is to use this fire breath, what its recharge is, the creatures in it have to make a dexterity saving throw, how much damage they take on a failure, and then what happens on a success. So it's very, very easy to read. Another significant change here is that these really high level dragons now all have spell casting in their stat blocks. So you can see here that the Ancient Gold Dragon has some spell casting. It can now cast Detect Magic at will. It can cast Guiding Bolt at 4th level at will. And it can also count or cast Shape Change, which is how they've consolidated change shape. They've just changed it into the Shape Change spell and added in some clarifications on how this spell affects the Ancient Gold Dragon when they use it. So I like that this is consolidated pretty simply, so it's very easy to use. There's not a whole lot of extra wording added in here. It's very, very clear and concise what everything does in the stat block. Also, once per day each, they can cast Flame Strike at 6th level, which is pretty significant. That's the new version of Flame Strike at 6th level would deal 66 fire plus 66 radiant, so that's 12d6 damage. That's a significant amount. So that's pretty cool to see. And they also have once per day each, they can cast Word of Recall and Zone of Truth, which are pretty interesting spells. You can also see here, Weakening Breath is its own thing. It used to be attached to the breath weapon. Now, Weakening Breath is its own thing. It has no recharge, so it's just something that you could do every turn if you wanted to. It's a strength saving throw, DC 24. Each creature that isn't currently affected by this breath in a 90-foot cone. On a failure, the target has disadvantage on strength-based D20 tests, and it subtracts 1d10 from its damage rolls, so that's quite different. And the creature repeats the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. And after 1 minute, it succeeds automatically. This is another way of just saying that Weakening Breath lasts for 1 minute if the creature would just keep failing saving throws. So I like that how they've changed that up. So that's very cool to see. But this multi-attack is quite potent here because not only could you just make 3 rend attacks, you could also replace those and cast Fire Breath, or you could replace one of those rend attacks and cast a 4th level Guiding Bolt, which would be 76 damage, or you could cast, or you could use Weakening Breath in place of one of those attacks. So there's a lot of variety here for what you can do with that multi-attack action. Also, significantly here, legendary actions are in the stat block. When I previously looked at a very early preview of the Ancient Green Dragon, it looked like they were going to switch out legendary actions for reactions, but it looks like they've gone back on this train of thought. So we can see here that legendary actions are indeed in this monster manual. The Ancient Gold Dragon has 3 of them, but it has an extra legendary action if it is in its lair. So another way that the fighting this dragon in its lair is increasing the threat level of this monster, and that's very cool to see in the stat block. And it has some pretty unique legendary actions here. You can see here that it has an all new legendary actions. There's a crowd control one, a ranged attack one, and then a mobility and melee attack. And all options now cast 1 action. So I really like how they've done this. So you can see here, Banish is a charisma saving throw, DC 24. Targets 1 creature the dragon can see within 120 feet of it. On a failure, it takes 76 force damage. The target has the incapacitate condition and is transported to a harmless denning plane until the start of the dragon's next turn, at which point it reappears in an unoccupied space of the dragon's choice within 120 feet of the dragon. On a failure or success, the dragon can't take this action again until the start of its next turn. So they've added a limitation onto that Banish legendary action, so you're only using it once when you're expending a legendary action. So that's nice. I like that they've added that there. And we also saw something very similar with the Empyrean stat block as well. I did go over the updated Empyrean stat block in a previous video about this, so check that out if you want to know more. And then for these other legendary actions, it can use spellcasting and cast Guiding Bolt at level 4, or it has a Pounce legendary action. It can move up to half its speed and make 1 rend attack, so that's really cool to see here. All in all, the Ancient Gold Dragon has gotten some major buffs here. It is basically an entirely new creature. There's so many new things that it can do, and this is scary. I would be terrified to fight this thing. But let's look at some other changes to dragon stat blocks. So there's an article on D&D Beyond if you want to take a look at it. It's called Explore the Exciting Changes to Dragons in the 2024 Monster Manual. So there are some hints to what we're going to get here. Specifically, every life cycle stage of the dragon is going to get a piece of artwork in a revamped stat block. So what this means is from Wormling to Ancient Dragon, there's going to be a piece of art for each stage in that dragon's life. So for the Red Dragon, for example, we're going to get a piece of artwork for the Wormling, and then the Young, and then the Adult, and then the Ancient, and that goes for all the dragons in this book. So you're going to be able to see what each of these dragons looks like at the particular life cycle or stage in their life, which is very nice to see here. We can also see from this article, it looks like Ancient Black Dragons, they can cast the Fear spell. They can also cast Melf's Acid Arrow and Vitriolic Sphere. Vitriolic Sphere is very nice. That was added into the player's handbook. It used to be from one of the older supplements, so very cool to see that in there because that is a pretty potent 4th level spell. Cool to see. They also hint here that the Black Dragon can also cast Detect Magic and Greater Restoration, which is oh, sorry, the antithesis to the Black Dragon, the Ancient Copper Dragon, can cast Detect Magic and Greater Restoration, which makes sense. It's the antithesis, so it is able to cure ailments rather than grant them. They also talk about in here that dragons, of course, use Charisma as their spellcasting modifier because they are commanding magic through their force of will, so that makes perfect sense. Also, Elder White Dragons, which are ancient white dragons, can cast the Fear spell through their Frightful Presence legendary action, which is neat to see. They also talk here about some of the revamped actions. So Rend is now the default melee attack. They deal either slashing or piercing damage, and depending on the type of dragon, it will also deal additional elemental damage, which is cool to see. And I also talk about here some of the multi-attacks for the adult green dragon, and its multi-attack can replace a rend attack with a level 5 casting of Mind Spike. At level 5, that is 3 levels upcast, so that's 68 psychic damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. So that's pretty significant there. That's really cool to see there. Get a hint at how they've changed the green dragon, because that's quite different from what we saw in that old preview. And then they also talk about here what we talked about, the Ancient Gold Dragon being able to replace one of its rend attacks with a level 4 Guiding Bolt or its Weakening Breath. So this just adds a lot of interesting variety here. You can also see here that they hint that similarly, the Ancient Blue Dragons can replace one of their attacks with Shatter, and then the Ancient Red Dragon can replace one of its attacks with a Scorching Ray, which makes a whole lot of sense. It's really cool to see. So legendary actions. They're talking here about how they've revamped legendary actions. All legendary actions now cost 1 legendary action. Some of them have limitations to the number of times that you can use them, but they do give some hints here at what some of the other dragons have. So for example, the ancient white dragon have a legendary action that delivers a freezing burst that reduces their target's speed, or they could use the fear spell to send their enemies scattering. Also, they talked about how the ancient red dragon can use a legendary action to sear creatures with Scorching Ray, or they can also use command to bring them to their knees. So sounds like we have a lot of interesting options available in these stat blocks. Also, they do talk about here, as I was discussing, how dragon lairs are deadlier and easier to run. So they have changed it to where legendary actions are now lair actions are now in the stat blocks. So what they do now is in adult and ancient dragons, they give these creatures more legendary actions per turn and more legendary resistances per turn. They also have regional effects now have mechanical implementations as well. So for example, drinking water found within 1 mile of a black dragon's lair now causes the poison condition for an hour, and finishing a long rest within 1 mile of a white dragon's lair can now reduce a creature's speed by 10 feet for 1 hour. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening here with dragons specifically. And it's nice that they have this article talking about some of the changes that are going to be coming here. Also, they have mentioned as well that kobolds are now dragons. So similarly how they've changed half dragons into the dragon creature type, kobolds are now also among the dragon creature types. So that's really neat to hear. Now I want to look at some of these stat blocks that they posted on their Twitter page, or X if you prefer. Here we have a look at the Vampire Familiar stat block. This is a new stat block. It's a CR3 Vampire. And there's some pretty interesting things to see here. So they have AC 15, 65 hit points. They have a climbing speed of 30 feet. They have a +5 to their initiative. Some decent stats all the way around. No low scores at all. They have resistance to necrotic damage. They're immune to the charm condition except from their vampire master, which is pretty interesting. They have 10 daggers. They can speak telepathically with their vampire master, which is pretty neat. And then they make 2 umbral dagger attacks. So these umbral dagger attacks deal piercing damage, which makes sense, but they also deal an additional 3d4 necrotic damage. And if the target is reduced to 0 hit points by this attack, the target becomes stable, but it has the poison condition for 1 hour. And while it has the poison condition, the target has the paralyzed condition as well. So that's pretty significant there. In addition, the Vampire Familiar has a bonus action called Deathless Agility that lets it dash or disengage as that bonus action. So that's pretty significant there. I believe that's an ability that they're going to be adding to most of the vampire stat blocks, or at least something similar to this. So that's really cool to see here. So there's a lot of mobility in these vampires in this new vampire stat block. A really interesting attack here that deals additional necrotic damage and has a way of delivering incapacitated party members to their vampire overlord. So some pretty fun stuff there. Also, there's a preview here of the Haunting Revenant, which is a gargantuan undead. This is a revenant spirit that has haunted a large structure, which is pretty scary to see here. Some pretty decent stats, decent AC and hit points. As you can see here, it's adding its proficiency bonus to initiative yet again. Something very common in these stat blocks that I've noticed, at least these higher level ones. This is a CR 10 creature, by the way. If a creature casts a spell while inside of the Haunted Revenant space, they have to make a Constitution saving throw if the spell fails, and it's wasted, so that's pretty scary there. The undead spirit could come back, potentially, which is pretty scary. And it also deals some pretty decent damage here. +9, it has advantage if the target is inside the Revenant space. And it deals 5d8 plus 5 bludgeoning damage, which is a decent chunk. It also has this ability, which is part of its multi-attack, called Invitation. It's a charisma saving throw, and on a failure, the target is teleported into the Haunting Revenant space. So you could use Invitation and then gain the advantage on the object slam attacks, which is pretty significant. Also, the creature cannot plane shift out of the Revenant space, which is pretty crazy to hear. I'm not sure if this is the whole stat block, but this is the part that they previewed here. So here in this article, vampires, owlbears, and more have unique variants in the new monster manual. They talk a little bit about what new creatures are going to be coming here in the monster manual. As you can see here, they talk about that vampire familiar, which is some pretty interesting stuff here. They talk about how there's going to be a primeval owlbear stat block, which is a higher CR owlbear, a CR 7 to be exact. And this is a huge monstrosity, so they're a size category higher. They have a ravage attack that deals additional damage if the owlbear charges this target before the attack, and they have a screech attack that incapacitates and deals thunder damage, which is a lot. And the funniest thing about the stat block is this owlbear has a fly speed of 5 feet, which is quite funny. They were laughing about it in the video where they talked about this owlbear. So yeah, it also sounds like they have a magic resistance as well, which is pretty significant. So yeah, a primeval owlbear is coming, which is pretty neat. It also looks like we have a new stat block called a Centaur Warden. These appear to be CR7 Centaurs. Oh, sorry about that. They have they forgo pikes and longbows, and they instead have a forest staff that deals bludgeoning and poison damage. They can use Entangling Trail as a bonus action, which allows them to navigate the battlefield without provoking attacks of opportunity, damaging and restraining the foes that they pass, which sounds pretty interesting. They also have a ranged attack called a Sunray attack, which deals radiant damage and gives the target the blinding condition until the start of the Centaur's next turn, which is pretty potent. That's quite potent there. They can also cast Speak with Animals at will, which makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't say here, but it could be the Centaurs are now Fey creatures, which would be interesting. I guess we'll learn when they release the Fey video. They talk here about the Haunting Revenant. They talk a whole lot about what I said here. By the way, the only way to escape from inside of the Revenant is to reduce it to 0 hit points, which is quite scary. So yeah, some pretty creepy haunted mansion type stuff here. which is quite cool to see. There's this violet fungus necro hulk, which is a conglomeration of violet fungi and dead bodies. It's a CR7 creature. It has a bonus action called Absorb Body that allows it to graft medium and small creatures onto itself. The grafted creatures gain their strain condition, and if they die, the creature's body is destroyed and absorbed into the Necro Hulk as it heals from that ability. So that's quite scary as well. So some really interesting stuff from those stat blocks. And then they also talk here about the Cyclops Oracle. I talked about this in a previous video, and it is also discussed in some detail by Dungeon Dad, so you can check out his channel too if you want to hear more about the Cyclops Oracle. Most notably is their ability to cast Divination, and they have a special reaction that's quite interesting here. And it's a new CR10 stat block. So this came out just recently when I started recording this video. So here's a preview of what the Arch-hag can do. So this is a large Fey creature, AC 20, 333 hit points, a plus 16 to initiative. That is quite high. They're adding double their proficiency bonus to initiative as well. Similar to the Ancient Gold Dragon. Sounds like it's going to be a typical thing in these high challenge rating stat blocks. Some pretty high stats here. The lowest one is that dex score, but they have proficiency in the saving throws for it. So there's a lot going on in this stat block. Some pretty interesting things going on here from what I can see. Looks like here they also have that special ability of having more experience, or granting more experience when they're fought in their lair. They have additional legendary actions and legendary resistances when they're in their lair. So that's really cool to see there. They have a special trait here called Coven Magic. While within 30 feet of at least 2 hag allies, the hag can cast one of the following spells requiring no material components, using these spells' normal casting time and using intelligence as spellcasting ability modifier. Looks like they have Augury, Find Familiar, Identify, Locate Object, Scrying, or Unseen Servant. The hag must finish a long rest before using this trait to cast that spell again. Okay, so they have free casting spells when they're in a coven. That's cool. It looks like they also have magic resistance, which is pretty potent. They have true sight of 60 feet as well, I just noticed, which is quite neat. Spiteful Escape. When the hag drops to 0 hit points, it dies only if it is within 30 feet of its anathema, which is a thing the DM chooses as the hag's most hated thing. Otherwise, the hag drops to 1 hit point and teleports to a harmless demi-plane, and it can't return to the plane it left for 2d6 days. When the hag teleports away, each creature within 60 feet of the space it left is cursed. Until the curse ends, a creature has disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws, and the hag knows its location anywhere in the multiverse. That's quite cool. I like that a lot. Also nice for a reoccurring villain ability. So it looks like here they have a multi-attack. They make 2 spectral claw attacks and they use cackling wave. I can't see here what spectral claw does, but it looks like it has a range or reach of 10 feet or range, and looks like it may prone the target here. Crackling wave, we don't get too much here from that side preview. Looks like they may have a Hypnotic Pattern as a at-will spell, which is quite interesting. And it looks like they also have Plane Shift as a twice per day spell. This is supposed to be Witch Strike. This is called Tongue Twister. And I'm guessing here that they have 3 legendary actions, or 4 if they're in their lair. Looks like they have Hag Swipe and then Malicious something or other. I see Dimension, so it looks like they might be casting Dimension Door. So this is an article that came out 2 days ago called Challenge Your Party with High-Level Threats in the New Monster Manual. It actually talks about the Arch-hag here, so there may be some additional preview to these. With a challenge rating of 21, the Arch-hag is a dangerous opponent for even the most seasoned adventurers. So, here's what they can do. So they can cast Dimension Door at will using a legendary action. So that is what this malicious something or other is. Which is pretty nice. Dimension Door at will is pretty great because it's a 500-foot range and you don't need to see the destination space, which is quite significant. This talks about that special ability called Spiteful Escape that we were talking about a second ago. Meddlesome Magic is its regional effect. While a creature finishes a long rest within 1 mile of the Arch-hag's lair, the first spell the creature casts against them potentially causes the caster to fall under the effects of the confusion spell. That's quite significant. I like that a lot. Oh, and then the reaction ability, Tongue Twister, allows them to cast a counter spell with a range of 60 feet. Yep. That's quite significant there. And it doesn't have a limited number of uses, so they could do that every turn. That's quite significant as well. Witch Strike is a bonus action that automatically deals lightning damage to any creature who's cursed by the Arch-hag and within 60 feet. That's quite significant there. And it looks like the Arch-hag has 3 abilities that grant curses to creatures. Crackling Wave, Tongue Twister, and Spiteful Escape. Interesting. So Tongue Twister prevents the creature from using reactions. Prevents them from casting spells with verbal components. Meanwhile, Crackling Wave prevents them from taking reactions until the end of the hag's next turn. So that's pretty interesting there. And then Spiteful Escape grants disadvantage on saving throws and ability checks. So yeah, the Arch-hag looks pretty stacked. I really like what I've heard from the stat block and what I've seen just from this half preview. There's some pretty interesting stuff in that stat block, and honestly, I think an Arch-hag could be a really neat boss. And potentially, if you're doing up to level 20 campaign, I think a fight against 3 Arch-hags, that could be an endgame fight. That's really cool. I like that a lot. Here's a preview of the Blob of Annihilation. So this is a gargantuan-sized creature. They are formed in the depths of wild space. Pretty neat here. The Blob of Annihilation can use its Restraining Glob action to sling Sledge at creatures within 600 feet. That's a long range. Creatures hit by this attack have their restrained condition until the end of their next turn and are reeled 60 feet straight toward the Blob. That's scary. The Blob can also use its Engulf action to roll forward and attempt to absorb every creature whose space it moves through. Creatures in its path who fail their strength saving throws are engulfed, and while engulfed, they have the restrained condition and are suffocating. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Remember, suffocation in the 2024 Player's Handbook imposes 1 level of exhaustion at the end of each turn once a creature runs out of breath. That is quite significant. Force of Entropy. An engulfed creature automatically takes force damage at the start of each of its turns, and the blob can use its Decay legendary action to automatically deal necrotic damage to engulfed creatures. Interesting. If the blob reduces an engulfed creature to 0 hit points, the creature dissolves into ash, which is ejected into the astral sea. Revivify won't help you here. Frightening. Quite scary. It is quite scary. Yes, the Scroll of Titan Summoning can summon some of these creatures, which is pretty neat. So there's some options here on how to use the Blob Annihilation in your games. It's quite nice. So the last preview here is for Animal Lords. So these are CR20 Celestials, which is quite interesting. There are 3 broad animal groups: foragers, hunters, and sages. While each animal lord can summon animal spirits, cast spells, shapeshift, and impose their commanding presence over their foes, their beastly affinity affects their lordly presence trait and their animal spirit and spellcasting actions. Foragers, resilient and hard to defeat, these animal lords can bolster their hit points while attacking, and their captivating presence allows them to charm and incapacitate enemies. Hunters, vicious and relentless, these animal lords can gain advantage on their attacks and use their presence to impose the frightened condition on enemies. Cool. Sages, wise and elusive, these animal lords use magic to bewilder and destroy their foes while staying safely out of reach. Paragon of beastly power. On top of their potent nature-based powers, each animal lord is fast, agile, and extremely perceptive. They have a 60-foot speed, fly speed, and swim speed, and they can use a legendary action to move up to their speed and make a rend attack. Yep, that's quite potent there. Their initiative bonus is plus 19. That's very high. They have true sight, and their passive perception is 28. That's also quite high. Yeah, good luck sneaking up on an animal lord who wants to eviscerate you. Funny. So, ways to use an animal lord in your game. A supernatural patron for a celestial warlock would make a whole lot of sense. Or a wild magic sorcerer may have acquired their magic through an encounter with an animal lord in the Feywild. That also makes quite a bit of sense. You can make an animal lord a ruler of an otherworldly domain in an area of the Beastlands or the Feywild. That makes quite a bit of sense. Rescue mission. A high-level party may be asked by a druid circle or sept clerics to rescue an animal lord trapped in a dangerous place like the Shadowfell, Pandemonium, or the Abyss. Perhaps Baphomet has taken a hunter animal lord as a prize, or a dark lord has captured a sage animal lord and is trying to steal its secrets. So yeah, there's a bunch of new monsters coming in the 2024 Monster Manual. And I'm very excited to see what new goodies we have once that releases on February 18th. I will have early access to the book thanks to D&D Beyond, so we will be taking a look at all the stat blocks once I get access to those. But yeah, a lot of interesting things here. I love these previews that we've been getting on all these interesting monsters. So do keep an eye out for more content like this. But yeah, thank you for watching. I will be taking a look at other previews that Wizards of the Coast gives us before this book comes out, so keep an eye out for those. But until then, I will catch you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!